I would not read Amazing Spider-Man, even if somebody paid me to. Oh my goodness, I have never seen a mainstream superhero have such garbage luck. Parker luck. For the past, has it been a decade? No, it's been probably 15 years. Like, these characters, you have to realize, the characters with the no-kill rule, they are the most terrifying. They are the characters that you do not want to see kill because they will be even worse than the ones that do. When discussing, I guess, like the limits or the moral implications of superheroes in the specific genre, something that always gets brought up is the no-kill rule. And what type of ethical and, just as I've said, moral dilemmas that causes. Should we be keeping these villains, these crooks, these goons alive, right? And there's a lot of discussion, debate on which side of the argument is better. Is it better to kill your villains and the henchmen, or is it better to just have that line in the sand, not to go across it, and to believe that everyone can be redeemed? Before we get started, let me know down below what you guys think of the no-kill rule. Do you think it's an effective method on how to measure and gauge what a superhero actually is, or do you agree with the methods of notable antiheroes like the Punisher? With that out of the way, let's get to it. This is one of those things where most people fall in the line of, yeah, don't be killing normal criminals, don't do all of that stuff, you don't gotta be straight boxing with them. When it comes to the villains, the recurring villains that cause a lot of havoc and destruction, people tend to agree that they are the ones that should go. And I'm in a weird predicament because usually there's only two extremes. Like, there's the, if we're gonna use characters to represent these sides, let's just say there's the Batman side, where it's like strictly no killing, no ifs, ands, or buts. And then there's the Punisher side. People agree with the Punisher, but he's shooting down normal criminals. He's shooting down regular, everyday people just trying to get by, right? And that's, I think, the problem. I like the Punisher a lot. I feel like he is a very complex and interesting character that has a lot of depth to him, and just like Batman, he leads to a lot of ethical discussions that make reading comics and this whole superhero like format and industry fun and engaging when you're in these like sort of like community posts. And of course, Batman, he has his own set of flaws, because when you consider the fact that you're just not letting certain people die, these things lead to, I guess, rippling effects that causes more problems, not for the people around you, not for the city, not just for the city, but also for yourself, right? Him letting these characters just survive, these villains, just him not killing them, has led to personal ingrained trauma in himself, right? These villains have gone on to harm who he cares about. And like, what does that really say about Batman for letting all these things happen, right? And it's such a difficult and complex situation because there's so many facets to it. But I guess let's just break it down, just give my opinion, right? My opinion is just that the no-kill rule is needed and engaging because, one, I guess it just leads to a lot of interesting storytelling potential and, I guess, like conflict, right? Some of the best scenes in comics and in just media, superhero media, comes from arguments and just conflict between two characters with opposing ideologies. If you look at Batman and his moral debate with like Red Hood and like Daredevil and Punisher, these are like where the superhero genre just shines. It's kind of like when two characters discussing the limitations of their genre, because as we know, superhero comics they're linear. They have led to some of the best stories in just fiction in general, but you have to remember it is somewhat of a circular loop, if not a circular loop, an infinitely expanding line forward, right? It just keeps going. And because of this, they can't really kill off a lot of their major villains, and if they do, they bring them back because that's where the money's at. Like, we love seeing heroes and villains fight each other, right? And they have great dynamics that keep these characters just relevant for as long as they've had, right? Characters like Superman and Lex Luthor, they are, I guess, like the godfathers of like the superhero and supervillain idea, right? And that's why they've been like relevant for like 80 years, right? And this is what keeps a lot of these top dogs at the top, because they have all of these iconic villains along with just having great iconography of them in and of themselves, having their own great mythology. And a lot of these anti-heroes don't have that mythology. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about. It's kind of like, if we're going from an in-universe perspective, it just has some weird connotations if you just end up just killing any and everybody, because you have to remember, these people have families, right? I think that's one of the many reasons I think Batman has brought up, is that, yeah, they're scum, but even scum have families. Even scum have people to take care of. Even scum, the filth that are on the streets, even they have people who care about them. And just depriving people of that, you're causing your own link and thread of just trauma, right? And they're just going to have a negative impact on someone's whole livelihood. And you have to remember, these things are ripple effects. They don't just affect one group of people. It's like, it just affects everyone that person knows, like in terms of like, from like a business perspective, from a family perspective, right? Whoever they had connections with, they all feel that. And if they had a good enough relationship with them, their lives will be changed forever. And then they'll end up like being influenced to hate that person, right? Even if the person knew that their loved one was a bad person. That killing that criminal who was just trying to make their way in the world because that was their only option, doing that might influence the people they love to hate the hero and to be influenced to actually go out and do some crazy stuff in revenge. People do crazy stuff out of revenge. You have to realize this. And there's, of course, there's just the heroic perspective of most of them, where it's like, this is what keeps us different. This is what separates us. This is what separates the people who inflict terror in the minds and hearts of others versus people who want to inspire hope. That's the biggest thing for characters like Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman. They're trying to be icons, inspirations for the people around them, to lift them up, right? They want to be relatable in a way that makes people comfortable coming up to them and talking to them about their problems, right? Like, I don't see a world where Spider-Man is like, I don't know, killing a bunch of criminals and then goes to like the sick kid's hospital and spends a day with him, like masquerading and play fighting and doing all these things as like Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure Tom Taylor did that one issue with like Spider-Boy where Spider-Man goes to a hospital with a kid with cancer. That's kind of like role playing, right? They role play Spider-Man and his sidekick, Spider-Boy, who was, of course, the ill child, and they're just going around just fighting these villains, quote-unquote villains, who are just, like, doctors, just putting on costumes, cosplaying. Like, I don't see that happening. That's the heart of what a superhero is, and that's what makes me continuously come back to these comics, is like these feel-good moments. And a lot of the things that people have to realize is the if it makes sense argument for the character, right? You can't just consider something bad writing just because you don't agree with their methods or because they've stuck to their methods for such a long period of time. Case in point, actually I kind of do a couple examples. Let's talk about who are 4 prevalent ones at the moment, 4 or 5. Let's say, of course, Batman has to be a part of that. Spider-Man, Daredevil is pretty popular right now, so let's pull him up. And who else? I guess Invincible, right? Invincible is a very popular thing at the moment. Of course, season 3 going on. I watched the first 2 episodes, and I really need to get back on it. I don't know what it is, but I think it's Invincible's animation. I'm not trying to be a hater, but I think the animation of Invincible, at least early on in season 3, is what's preventing me from continuing, even though the story is good. It's just something that it's holding me back. I just gotta get out of my own head, bro. I just gotta watch it just for the love of the game. What am I doing? Anyways, also do not spoil in the comments, but I know certain things just by watching like YouTube shorts, and of course I did read a good chunk of Invincible, but not up to like the Conquest stuff. I mostly seen Conquest and all those type of stuff from like Reddit and things like that. So I've seen only bits and pieces from panels. But I guess let's talk about if it really makes sense. So let's talk about Spider-Man. Spider-Man as a character, he is the blueprint of the everyman concept, and what that is basically the character that we can all relate to. They deal with issues that relate to us. We can see ourselves in them. And that's the kind of thing that makes this no kill rule thing kind of hard, is that we put ourselves in the shoes of these characters. And there's 2 ways of looking at this. One, if we were them, we would say, nah, we're just killing, we're just murking all of them. Or 2, we would be like what Daredevil said in his conversation with the Punisher, where it's like, bro, if I killed somebody, I would have that thought, I really just killed a human being, and I really just just snuffed out that flicker of light that could have been a good person, who could have turned his life around, who could have redeemed himself. You have to realize the no-kill rule stems from redemption. And when it comes to Peter Parker, he is the character who he wants to see the good in everyone, right? And it's also kind of like a Superman situation as well. I like to think that Superman and Spider-Man kind of are similar characters. And in so of the fact of while Captain America might be that current Superman level character in terms of being that sort of milestone and that beacon of light that people and heroes included look up to, I think Spider-Man fulfills that Superman role even more so, especially considering the fact that I don't know who, but it was one of my viewers. They did mention that in the future, I'm pretty sure it was that Cable told Peter that he would end up having the greatest legacy out of all of the superheroes present in the 21st century. And using that as kind of like a framework of his no-kill rule, right? He wants to leave a lasting impression, without him even knowing, he's going to leave a lasting impression of what heroism actually is. And if we're going to use examples, I haven't really read this run in a long time, and I'm not even the biggest fan of it, but Dan Slott he wrote Spider-Man for about 10 years. 10 years that you still haven't made in garbage comics. But he did have some gems. And one of those gems was the, what was it called? The Nobody Dies, right? It was called Nobody Dies. And in this arc, Alistair Smythe and the Spider Slayers, they end up going after J. Jonah Jameson, Spider-Man's biggest op. And in this kerfluffle, whatever word I'm trying to say here, in this little skirmish, Alistair goes after him, and when he was going to hit him, his wife, Jameson's wife, I think her name is Marla, jumped in the way, pushed him out, and got hit. And she ends up dying. But before her death, she says something along the lines of, get rid of all this hate in your heart. She was like, don't waste your life on this hate, right? She says something along those lines. And because of that, J. Jonah Jameson, he, for the first time in his life, he doesn't blame Spider-Man for the death. He blames himself. And I don't remember exactly what happens afterwards, but I do know that in Chip Zdarsky's run, when he reveals his identity and all that type of stuff, they're allies. Even to the current day, I'm pretty sure they're still good friends and just, they help each other. I don't know like what the current state is right now, because you wouldn't, gun to my head, I would not read Amazing Spider-Man, even if somebody paid me to. Oh my goodness, I have never seen a mainstream superhero have such garbage luck. Parker luck. For the past, has it been a decade? No, it's been probably 15 years. If it's 20, I'm gonna lose it. I don't know. Tangent aside, Spider-Man ends up coming to this kind of, he has these dreams, these nightmares of just seeing all of these people around him just die. Everyone who's ever seen, everyone who he's ever helped, all of them are killed by his enemies. But despite all of this, he comes to the conclusion that killing is still not the answer. Instead, he makes a vow on that day that no one will die in his presence. He makes a vow that no one will die in his presence. And that's a crazy, almost psychotic thing to do. Like to have that vow and for you to live by that. And he knows, I don't even know if he knows it actually, but like we all as the audience knows it, but he has to believe it, right? And these villains are on the extreme of, I'm gonna kill the people that you love. I'm gonna have to go on that extreme as well. I'm gonna have to play ball. I'm gonna have to say, you know what? I'm gonna be the complete opposite of your narcissism. I am going to be idealism in its purest form. I'm gonna say no one dies. You know how much of a bar that is? And as so far as I know, in Dan Slott's run, he did stick by that for the most part. As I know, if it was in his control and he was around. Even when Jameson was going to kill the Green Goblin, which a lot of fans would want him to do, and a lot of fans think that he would do because people think Spider-Man's no-kill rule isn't ironclad as Batman's for some reason. He literally jumped in the way of the bullet. He took that bullet Ultimate Spider-Man style, and he lived to see another day. And he beat Green Goblin all in the same time. So if you don't call that standing on business, I don't know what else there is to say. Furthermore, let's talk about Invincible. Invincible is an interesting case of the no-kill rule because it stems kind of out of that Superman world made out of cardboard type of situation where you have to hold back, otherwise you will end up like turning whoever you're fighting to like a splash of blood, right? And anyways, in this case, the driving force for Mark's not wanting to kill stems from A, well, killing is kind of crazy, right? B, I've seen the level of death and the level of destruction I could cause by seeing all of these Viltrumites just body entire populations of people. And I guess C, just not wanting to be like his father, right? He has a prime example of what not to be, and he's also seen alternate universe versions of himself who are complete meatheads, who will literally bend just the human race to their will, right? He's seen all of these examples, and he's even seen villains who came after him for the sole purpose of what he will become, right? And this is what keeps him on that straight and narrow. But the thing about him is that his rules not only get tested to the extreme, well, like a lot of heroes, but the thing is, he is still a growing character, right? He is still someone who is thrown into the thick of things. This man is in the thick of it, and everyone let me stop. That wasn't even funny. But he is in it. And this causes things like the Angstrom-Levy situation. Things with what I've seen with Conquest, not to spoil, but like it leads to him getting tested in ways that make him forget, right? He's engulfed by his emotions to the point where he doesn't know if he's going to control himself. And in some cases, he completely loses it, and then he's scared of what happens. It's like someone else takes over. And this is a cool, not really bit of subtext, because it's literally right in front of our face, but it kind of shows you how that instinctual, ingrained psychology of a Viltrumite is still present in Mark in some form or fashion, right? Even if he feels like, and even if he has arguments with his father, Omni-Man, of, I'm nothing like you, he still has that spark of rage that can go off at any minute, and that's probably why, that is why Cecil keeps all these contingency plans on his Batman type stuff, because he knows that at any moment, if his family or anyone he cares about gets too, not really disheveled, but if they get too much in harm's way, if any harm comes onto them, he could snap. As much as he wants to keep on to like his human ways of thinking and that he should not kill, he still has to deal with the repercussions of his actions, right? And his no-kill rule isn't ironclad at all, right? There is no situation where he is building upon his ethics, right? He's just thrust into situations, and he is just hoping that nothing too bad happens that will set him off, which that in and of itself also creates interesting dynamics. Batman is the character who gets the most hate for his no-kill rule, but I find it to be one of the more interesting examples because there's so much stuff piled upon it that make sense. So, of course, we have it separates us from them, the hope aspect, the rehabilitation aspect, the trauma aspect, the generational aspect, and I guess there's even a supernatural aspect that we can cover as well. So the trauma aspect is pretty self-explanatory. It's the ideology that he has that he doesn't want what happened to him as a kid happen to anyone else, and he doesn't want to cause that pain to happen to anyone else. Him seeing his parents gunned down in front of him has led to this sort of like tight-knit like trauma response where it's like, I don't even know if Batman is even fully capable of taking another person's life, which is really interesting when you think about it. I don't think that he can do it, even in the cases where he's pushed to the brink and you think that he's going to do it, when he seems and he says to himself he is going to do it and people pull him back, I feel like something would just spark in him and just stop him like a light switch turning off. Like, I don't think he could do it, and like this like response like keeps him from like going too far. People think that he goes far and he breaks all the bones in people's body, but if you think about it and you actually read Batman comics, he does the bare minimum to take people out. Like, he would rather just do like a clean punch to the face or a pressure point to knock somebody out as quickly as humanly possible. Because the thing about Batman is that he is all about efficiency. He's not trying to break all your bones. If he needs to interrogate something out of you and nothing else is working, he will do it. But for the most part, he isn't all about that life. Like, he actually is kind of a teddy bear. Moving forward, there's the generational aspect. Something talked about in Ed Brubaker's run of Batman was that it could be a subconscious thing with him, where it's like, because his father was a doctor who took the Hippocratic Oath of like never taking a life, that is ingrained onto him, right? He's seen his father not only work on patients and try his best, and his father instilling values onto him, but he's seen him like operate, right? He's seen him try his best to save the lives of people around him, even as a young kid, right? He saw, what's his name again? Carmine Falcone, right? Carmine Falcone went up to Bruce's, his house, right? And they asked for Thomas Wayne because he's like the best doctor, or one of the best doctors in Gotham, one of the best surgeons. And he was shot, and they asked to operate on him. And the thing is, as a doctor, Thomas was like, I have to do this, right? I have to save his life, no matter how bad he is. And Bruce saw that, and Bruce even had a conversation with Carmine after he was saved that kind of influenced and pushed his ways and his values and how he perceives the world going forward. And even more so on top of that, you have to remember, he also took an oath and a vow to not only to never take a life, but also to stay on the path of righteousness. And the thing of being righteous, while Batman isn't an entirely like religious character, he was at one point, of course, with his father being Christian and his mother being Jewish. As someone who did pray in the past, he does implement this into his worldview, and he does believe in staying on the path of righteousness. And righteousness usually involves not killing. And furthermore, on a kind of like supernatural aspect, Batman believes in a couple things. First of all, Gotham is haunted. Like, it is literally built on the remains of demons. It's haunted by Barbados as well, introduced in like Peter Milligan's like Dark Knight, Dark City run. I don't know if Barbados is like a bat god or something like that. I've read enough stuff with Barbados for me to probably know that, but like, Barbados as a character is someone that haunts Gotham and leads them to a path of just basically eternal damnation. And Batman also believes, he does say this in Scott Snyder's run, kind of like that balancing the scales of good and evil. If you get rid of something that evil as the Joker, something will have to balance the scales, and sometimes the scales do tip in favor of one side. And he feels like if he does kill the Joker, karma, or just the way the universe works, will bring something as bad or worse than the Joker. And the thing is, this was even tested in Grant Morrison's run. This does happen when Batman was taken off the board because of Final Crisis and him being perceived to be dead, right? And when he's dead, when Batman's out of the playing field, Joker usually is. And this was during the time where Dick Grayson, Nightwing, he was Batman, and Damian Wayne was his Robin. And during this time, Joker was out of the picture. And because of this, Gotham actually created their own set of new rogues for this Batman to fight. Like, a lot of them were like circus based, which kind of fits with the Nightwing motto, but a lot of them were as bad, if not worse, as the Joker, and they're all coming together in quick succession. Professor Pig was introduced during this time, and if you know anything about him, he is an absolute devious fiend that should be on every list there is possible. Do not let this man inside. 2, there was Flamingo. He's a mercenary, which, you know, nothing about that. He might be gay, you know, nothing wrong with that too, but he's a cannibal. And what do we do about cannibals? I don't know. Especially if you don't kill. What do we do there? And on top of that, there was Dr. Simon Hurt, who was, at this point in Batman comics, believed to be a literal manifestation of the devil in human form. And all of these things were happening at the same time, and in some cases, they were working together. And Joker was absent. Do you know how crazy that is? The amount of stuff that Dick had to deal with on the first year on the job just because Batman Bruce died. Like, people don't give this man enough flowers, bro. It is what it is. But like, going forward, going to like the Man of the Hour, of course, the one with his own TV show going on right now, there is my GOAT, Daredevil. And Daredevil is, his no-kill rule is very interesting because of course it gets tested like everybody else's, but the thing is, he is a Catholic and a lawyer and a superhero, And he is so fascinating to me. Like, all these characters I mentioned are fascinating, but obviously for different reasons. For Daredevil, it's because of his contradictions. He is a lawyer, but for some reason he's also a vigilante. He is a devout Catholic, but he dresses up as the devil. What does that show you about the psyche of Matt Murdock? Like, who does he perceive himself to be? We already know about things about, like, you know, him having to let the devil out. Of course, that being one of the coolest lines there can be for, you know, Daredevil himself. But having all of this, like, inner rage while still being someone who wants to be a beacon of just hope. People don't think about it like this. Like, he's not someone like a Spider-Man character, but he wants to be seen by the people of Hell's Kitchen as a reliable hero. And him being Catholic means that to kill someone is to break one of his most sacred commandments, right? It goes against everything. Thou shalt not kill. That is important for a reason. And it kind of goes against, like, him being a lawyer, right? That's like saying it's weird. He is full of contradictions. It's like saying you're above the law, but, like, of course, him being a vigilante is kind of saying that he believes in the law to the point of not killing, but he also believes in some cases it is broken and not viable to the point where he needs to be a vigilante to do certain things that the law just doesn't allow you to do. So it leads to him being very contradictory, but also it makes sense, right? I feel like the Catholic stuff in general just makes it so that even if it is contradictory, it makes logical sense. But it's kind of like a balancing act because he has killed before in the past, like especially in it being a big point in 2019's Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run. One of my, especially the first half of it was probably one of my favorites in recent years. And that leads to him going down the self-destructive path, because the thing is, he didn't mean to kill the guy, right? He just punched him and he fell in the wrong way. It was very realistic. And it leads to him just feeling so wrong, right? Like, even with Spider-Man coming in and telling him that he has to retire, there was a great scene with Spider-Man talking to Daredevil, and even another great scene with the Punisher believing that Daredevil finally agreed with him. And he's like, no, I'm afraid of what I can do. I know the destructive power I can cause with a gun in my hand. Yes, Frank, you may be a demon, but I'm the devil. I can do more with these little firearms in a minute than you can do in a week. Like, these characters, you have to realize that characters with the no-kill rule, they are the most terrifying. They are the characters that you do not want to see kill because they will be even worse than the ones that do. That's the thing that, like, really makes me fascinated by these characters, because their killing potential is so much more than people give them credit for that it makes me value that they won't cross the line, that they have the mental fortitude and the strength to stay where they feel like they need to be to better their society, right? And their little part of the world. Like, one of the interesting things about Daredevil, and it kind of comes in way of Frank Miller's, I think it was his final issue. It was called Roulettes. And this was this left a mark on me, bro. I'm not gonna lie. And it was a story where this is after the first, I don't even know if she died other times, but this was like the major death of Elektra when killed by Bullseye, right? And in this situation, Matt goes to the hospital because Bullseye is in the hospital. He has everything. He's broke up, literally. And he pulls out a gun and he plays a game of roulette, and it is fascinating because during this, like, roulette, he has, of course, this inner monologue that is seen in most comics, but then also gets like a flashback, you know, goes back and forth between this situation with a kid. What was the kid's name? Chucky. I'm pretty sure his name was Chucky, this black kid. And it's kind of a situation where, like, he takes this kid around, kind of like Spider-Man style, right? He takes this kid around New York, and he kind of, like, shows him around. They have fun, kind of, and, like, Chucky, like, kind of says all of these things about how, like, he's met him, but not really met him before. He's been him, but not really. Kind of, like, insinuating that, of course, he role plays playing as, you know, being Daredevil, like, with his friends, and he looks up to Daredevil, right? And it's one of these things where it's like it gives Matt this sense of just, like, hope, and, like, reinvigorates, like, his spark, right? His flame, because it's been like a couple months since Elektra's death, and he's been down for a while. And the problem is that somehow, I forgot exactly how it worked, but Chucky's father had a gun, and he was gonna shoot somebody who did him dirty. But Matt stops him, right? And he beats him up, right? And Chucky sees this, and then Chucky takes like his father's gun and he runs away. And it's like, what has Matt done? What psychological effect would it put on a person seeing their hero put hands on their father, right? Like, what does this do? And this actually ends up into a spiral for Chucky, where eventually he ends up shooting a school bully. And it's like, who was this kid at that moment? Was he imitating his father? Was he imitating or being someone like Bullseye? Or was he being like Matt himself? What has he done? What has he inspired? What has he influenced in the world? And in this game of like Russian roulette that Matt plays with Bullseye, and Bullseye can't even speak at this point, right? He is completely cooked, but he can still like breathe and see everything, and he was probably in complete terror. But like he does this with himself and Bullseye, clicking back and forth, right? Until we get to the last bullet in the chamber, and it clicks, and then then we as the audience realize there was no bullets in that gun. And then Matt says something along the lines as well, like, "Guess I'm stuck with you." And it's like once he was going through the motions, and eventually at the last bullet, right, the last click, he was finally feeling ready to kill Bullseye. But even at that moment, his past self, who didn't put any bullets in the chamber, stopped him, right? His rational self, right? It's kind of like having his rational and irrational mind fight against each other, not in real time, because actions of the rational self already happened and occurred in the past, but having this inner conflict just snap. And when we think it's all, his entire moral values are going to go out the window, it pulls itself back. He pulls himself back. He's like, while I'm ready, I smell your sweat, I'm ready to end you. My gun has no bullets. These are the type of things that keep me invested. Like, if you're able to turn the number one weakness of what people see in comics, as in that circular loop, and you're able to play it as a way to delve deep into your main character's psyche, and just how they influence the people around them, and how their villains have afflicted conflict onto not only them, but just the loved ones of that main character. That's what keeps me engaged and interested. It's like, how are these creative writers going to surprise me today with how they perceive these characters getting out of these certain moral dilemmas, when you're pushing it along the most rational road of how this character would act, and maybe irrational, right? In this case, Daredevil was playing roulette. No one would see this coming from a mile away. Pushing it to that extreme and playing with the genre and the trappings of these mainstream heroes to delve into what makes them actual icons and what makes them inspiring. That even at their lowest point, they still find a way to be better than those who oppose them, morally, emotionally, and ethically. Either way, guys, what do you think? I had a lot of fun making this video, and if you guys have any sort of video suggestions, please leave it down in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care.